Hello everyone and welcome back. And we are now in the final dungeon of Final Fantasy IV. And it's a pretty great final dungeon, even though it is basically a reworked version of Eureka the Forbidden Land from Final Fantasy III. So we have Kain back. His equipment could use some work, but we'll be able to fix that. A lot of the monsters up here are stuff we fought in the Bahamut Cave, so we won't be spending much time recapitulating what those guys can do. But don't worry, there is some nasty stuff we can encounter later, and we will be encountering it. The thing that makes the Lunar Underground a bit of a problem for me is that it is quite long, so I'm going to actually have to go easy on Bahamut-based problem solving. This encounter, however, is not one of those times. Yeah, a lot of Kain's real attack power comes from his jump ability, as always. And that should solve things. Goodbye. The Life Staff. I will be equipping it, but not now. Ah, secret passage to nowhere. Basically, Eureka the Forbidden Land was an area full of optional powerful weapons that you probably wanted to grab before you actually tried to finish the game. And the same sort of deal is here, but I consider these kinds of equipment as optional, as in technically you can skip them, but you should probably not. Speaking of which, we're about to grab the first piece of optional equipment. And just making sure that Sylph is in the correct place. Hello, Pale Dim. Okay, so Pale Dim is a pretty mean boss, as he casts Slow on as a counter hit. He punches pretty hard. And the reason I cast Float is to kill Edge. No, it's for another reason. Is that... Hold on... As that he counters magic attacks with Quake. And given that magic is probably the most damaging tool you have against bosses at this point... Well, that's how it's gonna be. Like in Eureka the Forbidden Land, there are 5 optional equipment bosses, and we're gonna be fighting all of them. But not in this video. There's a lot of dungeon between us and the rest of them. I could blow this guy up with a couple of castings of Bahamut, but there's still dungeon that I want to do. And it's Kane's turn to take a nap. Sorry, Kane, this just wasn't your day. Also, all of these optional equipment bosses use the Four Elemental Lords theme for some reason. But given that Golbez uses it, I'm beginning to wonder if this is actually the Servants of Zemus theme. Because all of the equipment is guarded by monstrous things that sometimes use some really dark magic. Anyway, cast float, he's not too much of a problem. And for our troubles, we get the Morasame, one of Edge's 2 ultimate swords. Given that there aren't that many flying enemies down here, I think we can switch out the Moonring Blade. So, while we're wandering around and grabbing equipment and all that junk, I should probably address something that I talked about earlier. I may have said some things about the After Years last video, and my general opinion is that serial escalation does not work in the Final Fantasy series. Because the thing about serial escalation is that, first off, it doesn't even always work in the genres that are built for it, like shonen fighting series. And secondly, serial escalation only really works if you're expanding the defined setting along with the scope of the defined threat. Which Final Fantasy IV really didn't do in the After Years. The thing about other Final Fantasy direct sequels like Dirge of Cerberus and Final Fantasy X-2 is that they didn't really escalate the scope of the threat, they just made things different. I have no problems with the idea of Dirge of Cerberus, I just wish it was a better game. I don't mind the idea of Final Fantasy X-2, I just never really got around to finishing that either. Monsters in a box. Red Giants. Yeah, this is the place where Red Giants start to come in twos and so become an actual lengthy problem. Because my first thought when encountering big clumsy guys like this is to use them as hit point batteries, you know, to just cast Sylph on until the cows come home. But these things explode if you do that. And there's no way I'm going to mess up and trigger a devastating monster counter at this stage in the game. Who knows what'll happen? And the only reason I'm really showing them to you guys is because they're a monster in a box. I really just plan to skip all other encounters with these things. I only got away with that because it was so close to death. These things have like 10,000 hit points. And down he goes. What's our prize? Besides gold and experience. Aha! Edge's ultimate armor. The ninja clothes. They give him a much-needed boost in magic defense, and I'm glad to get that heavy armor off of him because heavy armor pieces actually reduce evasion a bit. Plus, the black clothes have, plus the ninja clothes have better defense than the Genji armor anyway. Can't believe I'm getting so many encounters around here. I'm still basically in the first room of the dungeon. So in addition to those actual bosses, there are tons of monsters and boxes in this dungeon. I guess one of the things I like about the endgame of Final Fantasy IV is that it never feels like you have to jump through a lot of hoops between when you find out about the main villain and when you can actually get to the final dungeon. There's learning about Zemus, destroying the Babel Giant, and here you go. Okay, what's around here? Aha! This place is lousy with secret passages. It actually gave me a bit of a hard time when I was playing the Complete Collection version, as that's based on the Japanese version where the secret passages weren't marked. And we're coming across Kane's ultimate equipment, the Dragoon Armors. Yeah, this game doesn't make you fight too hard for Kane's ultimate armors. Ultimate weapon? Well, that's a little different. There we go. Nah, didn't feel like those guys. Of course, the final dungeon in either version is home to many appropriately mean monsters. Like these guys. They counter physical attacks. And they counter them with Paralyze. It doesn't always work, but it's there. They also have normal attacks, which is a big-ass lightning bolt. Like so. But nothing that you can't manage. Bahamut solves all of our problems. Except behemoths. Aha, Artemis arrows. The ultimate arrow type for Rosa and her bows. If you decide to have her use bows at all. And I don't think I will have her use the bow for the final boss. I think for that I'm going to need a lot more healing power. Pick your battles carefully. I ran from that one because I hadn't healed Edge. The thing is, even with the best defensive equipment you can give Edge, he's still fairly fragile. Also, there's not really much to talk about in terms of plot, because it's basically a straight shot from defeating the Babel Giant to actually making it to the final boss, and there's really not much that comes in between. Well, nothing that comes in between plot-wise, aside from talking to the 8 crystals for a little bit of lore. Oh, hello there. 12,000 hit points. Weak against lightning. That seems legit. Anyway, in the Japanese version, this enemy was known as the Little Murderer. Now, he is actually weak against lightning, but hitting him with it can cause problems. Now, I had thought I'd actually broken his AI script, but that would be completely wrong. There's a reason he casts haste on himself. Well, this is a problem. I should have cast Bolt 3. So this is why you don't hit this guy with lightning, because if you don't actually hit him with lightning, he just keeps on casting Scan on himself. So don't exploit his weaknesses, people. It is not a fun times. See, dump some cure potions down Edge's mouth. You know what, I'm not really going to be using these for anything else, so might as well just dump all of them. If you've seen one behemoth battle, you've seen them all. And that's Rydia's ultimate rod. It casts Comet when used as an item, but it's not that useful at this point in the game. However, it does give a sizable boost to Rydia's casting stats, so I'm going to need all the firepower I can get. We'll be getting that sword later, but not now. Ah, Ramon. This guy was a boss in Final Fantasy III. Now he just casts, Fatal Countdown, or whatever it's called in the Japanese version. It actually has quite a lot of hit points, so we're gonna hit it pretty hard. The thing is, multicasting that spell actually resets the timer, so the amount of danger you could actually be in from that spell is very small. Well, it could be very small. Who knows what's going to happen in your game? Yeah, that's what equipping radio with rods does. It makes Meteo obsolete. So this next chest has a blue dragon in it, so I made a dumb joke. And I can get away with it because this was also composed by Nobuo Umeatsu. So these are the two types of dragons you'll fight in the Lunar Underground. The red dragon is much more offensively oriented, while the blue dragon is more defensively oriented. Which means when I fight blue dragons alone, I basically use them as hit point batteries. Thanks to Infinite Sylph. I mainly did this because I wanted the red dragon out of the way as quickly as possible. They can do some very nasty things to your party. And down they go, and for our troubles, we're gonna get something pretty good. Yep, the Crystal Shield, the first of Cecil's ultimate armors. Now let's see what we got in here. Most people put them on the mages, but Edge can actually equip it, and that's probably a good idea. Because Edge needs both kinds of defense, physical and magic, and the Protect Ring gives him a lot. Plus, it gives him elemental resistances. In Final Fantasy Easy Type, it doesn't give elemental resistances, it gives elemental absorption. No wait, that's something else. I'll talk about what does that later, and we blew up another behemoth, woohoo. Which means we have the crystal armor. No wait, yeah, it's definitely something else that gives elemental absorption in Easy Type. Oh dear. By the way, this video has the very largest difference between actual recorded time and actual video time of any video I've done, because the actual recording of this took about 50 minutes, and, well, you can look at the timer to see how much made it in. That's because even with Bahamut on hand, encounters aren't necessarily quick down here. Yeah, the thing is that red dragons do, apart from their breath attacks, which I won't be showing off, is that they're the first enemy in the game that can do double attacks like the crocodiles in the barren sewers or the underground waterway. And I'm out of MP for Rydia. That's okay, Rosa took care of everything. And Rydia has learned Flare. Now, Rydia still learns Meteo at level 60. It's the only spell that didn't have its learning level reduced. So I don't really think I'll have her learn it by the end of the game unless people want me to have her get it. And even then I may just consider not doing it. Well, time to burn some ethers. More of these. I want to make it to the next floor, thanks. Oh, by the way, when you encounter blue dragons, red dragons, behemoths, and a couple of other things in the wild, you can't actually run from them. Even though the game never says anything like can't escape, you have to use special abilities like smoke or exit in order to escape battles with these things. I end up using smoke the most because Edge has the highest speed of any party members. Hello, treasure chest, how are you doing? Aha, Rosa's ultimate robes, I guess. You know what, never mind you people. I got things to do. Let's see what we got in here. Oh, this is no problem. The dragon fossil is just a palette swap of the dragon bone that we encountered earlier. And they don't really do anything more threatening. There we go. That should do things just fine. They can do Curse, though. But thankfully that's not a persistent ailment. Wow, I didn't even need the spell. What's our reward? Ah, the crystal helmet. And that's all of it. I need to sort out my inventory. And I'll just grab this. Oh, that's a pretty mundane treasure compared to everything we've been collecting so far. So, I actually skipped 2 blue dragon encounters that took place within steps of each other. Like, these are the 2 blue dragon encounters I skipped. There are just so many of them down here. Alright, let's see how it is. You know what? I'm gonna call it a day. Be seeing you next time when we do more of this dungeon. Bye!